Voila. Now, my first question to you, what do you think the DOM is? Because if I go to my page now, and I open my dev tools, and if I go to the element tab, as you can see, I can see my HTML here. I mean, I have nothing, but I can see my HTML here. So let me, if I create an element here, any element, let's just create a div, for example, div with class, let's say intro. And if I go back to my element here, as you can see, I have my div here. So can anyone tell me what is the DOM, or try to tell me what is the DOM in simple words? What do you think the DOM is?
It's just a method to write HTML inside JavaScript.
Yes, indeed. So it allows me to manipulate, let's say, my HTML or the DOM using JavaScript. Indeed. What else? What do you think the DOM is? The DOM stands for Document Object Model. And what do you think it is? What is a DOM? Yes, good. Another idea, what do you think the DOM is? So simply the DOM is tree of elements. It's tree of elements. Why do I call it a tree of elements? Because as you can see, my HTML here, everything inside this element, which is called HTML, it's just like a tree like that. So imagine that's the root of the tree, that's the HTML. And after that, I have two parts. I have the head and I have the body. And after that, the body can be divided in different parts, in div, in something like that. So we call it just tree of nodes, or tree of elements, or tree of objects. You may tell me, why tree of objects? Can anyone tell me why I am saying tree of objects? What is a DOM element? It is an object. So that's the reason why I say it's tree of object. Remember all the time, a DOM element is just an object in JavaScript. So it is an object. That means it has a method on it and it has some property on it. Is the idea clear? So again, the DOM simply is a tree of elements or tree of nodes. The node is what connecting, let's say that's the body, and then we have a div. So what connect both of them, that's what you call node. So a node is the point connecting between, let's say, the div and the body, or the div or any element. So we call it tree of nodes, or tree of elements, or tree of objects. Is the idea clear? Now, because the DOM element is an object, that means it has what? It has method on it, and it has properties. So it has properties and it has a method. So I can use this different method depending on my need. We didn't see this method yet, but I want to put in your mind now, the DOM is just, as I told you, any DOM element is just an object. And this object, because it's an object, it has some method on it. I can use them, and also it has some property. Is the idea clear? Now, your browser here, this browser is very advanced tool. This, can you tell me what exists inside your browser? What is the browser consist of? Can anyone tell me? So I have JavaScript engine, of course, because it can understand JavaScript, right? What else? It has HTML and CSS parser, because if it does not know how to parse the HTML and CSS, it will not be able to understand it. So it will take your HTML, and after that, it will convert it to a DOM. And actually, this is what we call HTML parser. Same for CSS. It takes your CSS, and after that, I can see your CSS in the styles here. So far, your browser is consist of JavaScript engine. I have HTML and CSS parser, and I have a lot of API in my browser. Of course, you don't know what's an API now. We'll study it later in asynchronous programming. Is the idea clear? Okay, let's see if I forgot anything. So what is a DOM? Here, as you can see, it just shows you it's tree of objects, as I told you, or tree of element, or tree of nodes. So we have our document. The document means a page. And in the document, I have the root. As the root here is the HTML tag. So the HTML tag, we call it the root. And then, of course, in the root, I will have the body, or the head here, and I will have the head here and the body. And after that, inside the head, I can have a lot of different tags here. For example, I could link my CSS. I can link my, for example, I have a lot of meta tags. That's what you call. These meta tags are not, I will not see them, but they're important for the browser. And here in the body, I can have different elements according to my need. And that's the reason why we called at the DOM just tree of object or tree of nodes or tree of DOM element. Is the idea clear? Super clear? Okay. What is the DOM? The DOM is no here. Yeah. Standard module for all document type. What is a DOM? So the DOM is standard object module and programming interface for HTML. It defines the HTML element object, the property, and the method and the event. The event, that's mean when I click on some element, for example, if I have a button, I click on it, something will happen. And that's what we called event. We didn't study the event yet. Okay. So first, if I go here and I go to the console, what is the biggest object in JavaScript? What is it? Window. So the window here is the biggest object in JavaScript. And the document exists inside this object. So if I say Windows or window dot document, notice it select my page. So as I told you before, in JavaScript, we have a very big object. Inside this object, we have a lot of methods like console.log, like alerts, like stuff like that. All of that defined in JavaScript. And I told you if the method or the object exists on the Windows, we don't have to type windows.console.log. You can just type console.log, that's it. And the same idea, the document exists in this big object. And that's the reason why I don't want to say, or I don't need to say windows.document, just documents enough. Is the idea clear? Okay, so first we need to learn some method here. So let me log the document actually, log document here. If I log the document and I go here, I will get the same idea here. As you can see, if I click on it, I will have my root element, which is HTML. I have the head with all meta tags, and I will have the body with all element, as you can see. Now, first, I need to learn, we know what the document now is. We need to learn some different methods. We need to learn how to select an element. So when I want to manipulate any element inside the DOM, first I need to select it. If I cannot select it, how can I manipulate it, right? So the first way I need to know how to select a DOM element. So we have many different ways. The first way it will be, can anyone remind me what's the first way? Get element by? Get element by ID, yes. So why we are using the ID? So it's document.get element by ID. And remember the ID here, I need to pass it inside the string. It must be stringing. So can anyone tell me, so get document, why we are using the ID? Why not something else? Why the ID?
Because it's unique.
Exactly, because the ID are unique in JavaScript. And you need to understand this get element by ID only exists on the document. So I can use it inside the document, but if I select an element and try to use it, it does not exist on the DOM element, it exists only on the document. So here, if I select an element, let's say I have a div. Let's say I have, this is my div. I already have my div, const div is equal to document dot get element by ID. Let's say it's theoretical. Let's say that's my element. And after that, if I say div dot get element by ID, it will not work. Why? Because get element by ID only exists on the document. It's a method on the document, not on the individual element. Did you understand what I'm saying, Agnieszka? So I cannot select any element and I say dot get element by ID again. No, it's this method only exists on the document. So all the time I need to say document dot get element by ID. With other element, I cannot use. Is the idea clear? Good. So let's try to select this element here. What element do I have? So let me open my HTML. I have this one here. I don't have an ID. So let's give it an ID. ID, let's name it ID intro as well. It's okay to have the same class and ID, but of course I cannot have the same ID with another element. So let's go to my JavaScript, and here I will type intro like that. And that's my element. Now, if I log my element, what do you think I will see? I will see my element here, as you can see, div class intro, ID intro. So that's my element actually. But here in the element also, I have a lot of method. Why do I have a method on this element? Can anyone tell me? Why do I have some method on? So if I say def dot, so see, I have styles, I have tag name, I have text content, title, toggle attribute, translate. I have get element by ID. It does not exist. I told you. Get element by ID only exists on the document. Okay, but I have a lot of method and property on this element. Why? As you can see, a lot of property and a lot of method. Why? Because it is, I just told you, because it is an object, because each DOM element is an object. That means I have a lot of style on it. Okay, that's the first way how we can select an element. Any question here? We have another way. Of course, we have many different ways to select an element. First, get element by ID, and then we can have get element by class name if I want to. So let's try here with class name. So I can say const div, it's equal to document dot get element by class name. And remember here, voila. So let's class name. What's the class name here? What is the class name? Intro.
That's not F.
Hmm?
You don't have the F. It's intro.
Intro.
If you look HTML, it's not. It's not
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Let's see. Intro.
The class name.
Let's see. Intro. Is it correct like that?
Take the ID. You have to take the class name. You take the ID name.
But the ID and class, they have the same name. Ah, you are right. You are right. My mistake. My mistake. Sorry for that. I thought both of them are the same. Okay, now get here, get element by class name. Now I can use this one, of course, but here, what do you think it will give me? So this method, what do you think it will give me?
It's not the same thing.
Of course, not the same thing, but what it will give me? If I go here, it give me something different. Can anyone tell me what is that?
Not yet.
Yeah, but it look like more like. It look more like. Notice here, square bracket. More
Um,
like.
Pareil.
Indeed, it look more so that's what you call HTML collection. So when we use get element by class name, it will not return you a single element. Why? Because multiple element could have the same class name, right? So what it will return you, it will not return you a single element. It will return you an HTML collection. HTML collection, it is an object, but it's look very similar to an array. And also, it's not an array, but it has some array method on it. For example, if I say dot or a div dot for each, I can have a links. As you can see, I have item, I have ID name. I think I can use also, no, I don't have for each. So I have item. So let's say the links named item. Actually, I should have for each if I'm not mistaken. Dot for. Yes, I should have for each. So it should be div dot for each. Let's see if that will work or not. And here that should be, let's name it EL, for example, and let's try to log the EL. Here, I don't need really this one. Yeah, it's fine. Let's go here. Div dot for each is not a function, so it does not exist on it actually. But I think we can use the index. So if I say div dot bracket 0, and now it should give me the element. And voila, I got my element. So I can use the indexes. And here it looks like I cannot use for each. So it does not have a method on it for each. So what I can do, because I can use the index, I can use for loop, right? I can use for loop to loop through all of them. And after that, I can have the index. So again, yes, Agnieszka. No, because when we use query selector, yes, but in this method, so you need to know the method are different. When I say get element by class name, I'm already telling it it's a class. So I don't need to do that. You got the idea. Now, if I use query selector, you're right. I need to specify if it's a class or ID or even HTML tag element, H1 or something like that. But here, this method, When I say get element by class name, that means I already know it's a class. This method has to work this way. Okay, so what does document or get element by class name return? It returns HTML collection. HTML collection, it look like an array, and we can use the index to access different element. And here we can use the for loop to loop through all our elements. Is the idea clear here? Okay, what is the other method? Can anyone remind me? Can I use tag name? Hello, can I use tag name? So we have here document dot good morning, get element by tag name. And what tag name do I need? I need the div, right? And what do you think it will return again? Will it return a single element or a collection? I'm using tag names. That's multiple element could have the same tag name, right? So it doesn't make sense to return one element. So if I refresh here, as you can see, Golkin, have a seat, please. Have a seat. So as you can see again, if I'm using get element by tag name, it will return me a HTML collection. Same, just like class name. I think this one's very clear. This is not difficult. But you just need to remember, depending on the method, you need to know if it returns single element or multiple element or collection, or now we will see something like node list. So it returns different element, and depending on this element, you can use different. For example, if it's HTML collection, I can use for loop to loop through all the element. If it's single element, I don't need to loop through anything. I can just use the element if I want to. What else do we have? Okay, so we've seen so far get element by ID, by class name, by tag name, and we need to see query selector. So what is query selector? Can anyone tell me? Document.query selector. So with query selector, it gives me multiple options. I can, here with query selector, I'm not defining if, I'm just saying I'm selecting an element. I'm not defining the ID or the class. So here with query selector, I can use a class if I want to, or I can use the ID if I want to, or I can use the HTML tag if I want to. For example, if I want to use a class, I need to say dot intro to tell him that this is a class. And now if I log my div, notice what will happen. Of course, this method, it will return me, this method, it will return me a single element. And if you have multiple elements with the same class, it will return you the first one it finds, okay? So if I go here, it will return me a single element, as you can see. If I have multiple elements with the same class, so let's try to duplicate this one. It will not return them, it will only return the first one it finds. And if I go back, still give me the same idea, as you can see. So it gives me a single element, as you can see. Yeah, voila. So all the time, query selector here, if I use dot to mention it's a class, it will return me, as you can see, a single element. Even if I have multiple elements, it doesn't care. It just go and finds the first one it finds and it return it to you. But what if I want to use element with ID? Well, it's simple. All I have to do just hash. And what was the ID? It was intro, if I'm not mistaken, right? If I go again, it will give me. What if I want to select an element with an element tag? Well, it's simple as well. I can just use a div like that. And now it gives me my element. So with query selector, as you can see, I have multiple options. I can use class, I can use ID, I can use the element tag. But you need to remember that query selector all the time will return a single element, the first element it finds. But what if I want to select multiple elements? Yes, so I can use query selector. Of course, with the ID, I cannot, because it's not possible for multiple element to have the same ID, but I can use it for classes. So here, if I say, for example, const div with s divs, because it will multiple query selector all, and I still select me all the divs, and here div is not defined. What's the problem here? Let me pass first the class intro. And now it return me node list, as you can see. It return me node list with the 3 div I have. I don't think we can use We can use it with the tags, if I'm mistaken. You can all use it most of the time with classes. But
No,
here
no,
I have a new element.
you can use, no problem.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
H1, let's see. Do I have H1?
But
Yeah, actually it works. It works. It just return me a node element. But then I said, div, why it didn't work?
Because your cost was divs and the console log was div. That's why
Okay, you are right. My mistake. So here, as you can see, I can use actually the element tag here. I can use the element tag or I can use the classes. I cannot use the ID, of course. It doesn't make sense. But can anyone tell me what it returned here? It is not HTML collection. It's a node list. A node list is a little bit different than HTML collection. Why? Because if, for example, I go here and I say div, it has some array method on it, like for each. I can use for each with the node list. So for node list, I can use for each. I can use entry. I can use a lot of not all of them actually. I can use for each item, entry, key, and value with a node list. And for HTML collection, I cannot use anything. I can just use the index only. Is the idea clear? Yes, no. Again, whenever we are selecting element, either I'm gonna get single element or I can give multiple elements. This multiple element, either it will be HTML collection. If it's HTML collection, I can access it using the indexes. And also I can convert HTML collection to an array. We will see that later. Here, node list, we don't need to convert it to an array because most of the time it has a method on it called for each, so I can loop through each element. Do you have a headache, Daria? Everything is clear so far? Yes. I'm just showing you different methods, so you can all the time go back to the documentation and find different methods. Okay, so we know how to select our element using different multiple way. It's really depend on your way. And you may tell me which way you prefer. It's really depend on the scenario. Most of the time I use get element by ID. But for example, if I have a class, I will use query selector, but I need to be careful. I'm not selecting multiple elements. I'm using query selector. So if I'm not using query selector all, I need to use query selector because the query selector returns the first element, it's fine. I'm sorry?
Why do we need a query selector? It's easier to manipulate with get element by ID or by
Because query selector actually, it does not exist only on the document. It does exist on every DOM element. Get element by ID, it's only exists on the document. What do I mean by that now? In the document, when I say document.get element by ID, it needs to scan all the HTML to find that there is a unique element. And that's the reason it exists only on the document. But query selector, it exists on any DOM element. And like that, for example, let's say, just to make it clear, let's say here I want to select this div. Let me remove those. Let's say I want to select this div, and then from this div, I want to select the H1, for example, like that. Can I do that? Well, yes, I can do that. I don't have to use the document all the time because it's not efficient. Can anyone tell me why it's not a good idea to use document.get element, let's say by tag to search for H1, and it will be better if I use, for example, select this element, and after that, say dot query selector H1. Why it will be more performance? When I say document.get element by ID, it scans all the document or not? So it goes through each element, it scanned everything. But when I say I have specific element, specific div, and I say query selector, it will only look inside this div. And that's mean here, it will not take a lot of time to scan all the document. It only scans this div I have. Clear, no? No, not clear. Just a second, let me show you. Now here I'm selecting my element, using query selector here. And my div here, it has a class called intro. Now, what if I want to select my H1? I can say const header, it's equal to div dot query selector, and as you can see, the method exists on it. And I can now log the header and I will have it. Voila. Now, if I go here, see, I have my header. But if I now use this one, get element by ID, it will not work, okay? It will not work because get element by ID only exists on the document, okay? It does not exist on the individual element. So if you have an element which is already selected, let's say you're already manipulating the div, it will be easier to say div.query selector to get the H1 instead of saying document.get element by ID, which will be, for example, I give the H1 an ID, because every time I say get element by ID, it will scan all the document, and that will be less performance.
But you can add some class or ID to H1.
I can add,
Class or ID to H1 and create H1 directly result. For example, if you give a class not to the view, you give class to the H1 or ID to the H1.
yes, the point is not like that. The point is what I'm trying to explain. Now I'm selecting my, let's just do it this way. Now here I am selecting my my H1, and now if I use the second way, which is, let's say, header 2, and I say document dot get element by ID, for example, and the ID is header. This one it will select, and this one it will work, but there is a different in performance. ID header. So both of those, this one and this one, they are doing the same job. But if I already have a div, if I'm already selecting the div for some reason, I'm doing the div, using this way, it's this one, which is div.query selector, it will only look inside the div. But this one here, it will look all through the document. And like that means, of course, it will take more time. Did you understand what I'm saying? Clear, Agnieszka? Okay. Just remember query selector, it exists on every DOM element, but could get element by ID? No, it only exists on the document. Okay, that's fine. That should be fine so far. Let's just see here if I forgot anything. DOM method, get element by ID, we've seen it. We have inner text and inner HTML. I need to explain it. So let me get rid of all of those. And now I can select my div. So I name it const div. It's equal to document. I can use the ID or whatever I want to. Where's the query selector? It's fine. What was the ID? Intro, right? And now let's go inside my stuffy here. And intro, that's fine. Now, because I'm selecting my element, as you can see, I can manipulate this element a little bit. How? I can just say div dot inner text. So if I try to log this one here, div dot inner text, let's see what we'll find. Log. Voila. Save and go back here. So as you can see, it's giving me typing speed test. Okay, let's go back to my div and see what I have inside it. So actually, it just give me the text here, whatever inside, any element inside it, I just have the text here, typing speed test. So inner text, it will only give me the text exist inside this element, only the text. But what if I use another method, which is inner HTML? And you told me, Agnieszka, before, what's the difference between inner HTML? Let's see what's the difference. Let's compare them. Let's duplicate this one. And let's say inner HTML. And let's see the difference. What's the difference between the two? So inner text is give me only the text, but inner HTML, it will give me everything inside it, including the tags, as you can see, HTML tag as well. Is the idea clear? What's the difference between inner HTML and inner text? 100%? Okay, let me do it in another way. I'm gonna remove this one. And now, because I'm selecting my element, as you know, I can just say div.inner text. It's equal to hello world, for example. And of course, now if I go to my div, I should have, so if I inspect it, if I go to my div now, as you can see, I have inside it hello world. So because that's inner text, it will just put text inside it. But let's try to do something a little bit different. Instead of putting H1, I want to put H1 like that. So H1, hello world. And of course, if I use inner text, will that work or not? It will show me like a DOM element or not? No. It will show me just as a text, as you can see. Even H1, it will just show me as a text. But if I use inner HTML, notice what will happen. it will render it as a DOM element. Voila. So that's the difference between the two. We have something called text content. For now, don't worry about it. I'll explain it later. What else? What if now we've seen how to select an element, we've seen how to change the inner text, we've seen how to change every element inside the text. If I want to using inner HTML, what if I want to add a class to this element? Can I? Can I add a class to this element or change the style? Of course I can. So here, let's see this way. I can just say div dot style dot, let's say color, it's equal to red. And now if I go here, now the color is red. But notice what happens, this style, where it is. Where is this style implement? Is it inline style? Is it in separate folder? What is this style here? Can anyone tell me?
It's inline.
Yes, it's inline style. So as you can see here, it makes that when I say style dot some property, it will make it an inline style. And here you can use all the property in CSS, but with one note. For example, if I have as a font size, I want to change the font size, I will not say, for example, here like that. If I use the font size, I will not say font dash size. No, that's not gonna work. We are using here camel casing, not snake casing, or using dashes. So if I say font size, notice font family or font size, notice everything is camel casing in JavaScript. Click, and here let's make it 25 pixel. And now if I go here, well, it's 25 pixels, as you can see. Is it quite clear? Of course, that's not the best way, but I'm just showing you that you can modify whatever you want to. What is the best way? Well, the best way is adding a class. So let's go to our element here. I'm selecting it by ID. And let me remove this class here. And see how can I add a class to my element. So to add, I will remove those. I don't need those. And actually, I'm going to remove this one as well. All I have to do now, I'm going to just go here inside. And I'm going to create some text, for example, hello world, for example. Okay. So how can I add a class to an element? Well, it's quite simple. All I have to do, I have just a div dot class list. You can use class name, but if you use class name, know that if there is already a class on it, it will remove it. So this one here, it will overwrite your class. So if I already have a class on my HTML, this class is going to override this class. That's not always a good idea. So it's a better way, unless you are sure you are giving it only one class. So if you want to give this element only one class and you are sure it's one class, you can use this one. So for example, container. And now I can go to my CSS. Let's go to my CSS here. And for example, let's say container. And let's give it a background color. I don't know, blue. Container, which is not correct. Now it should be correct. If I go here now, as you can see, it's a blue, the class being implemented. And of course, if I go here, I also find the class, as you can see. Everything is fine. Now, if I am sure I am gonna give this element one class, it's a good idea to use class names, that's fine. But if I don't know if it already has a class and I don't want to override this class, there's another method here. Just div.classList.add, and I can give the class whatever I want to. Now here's the class I want to give it, it's container. Voila. And if I go back, same idea. But of course, now I can add multiple classes, not just one class. If I want to, I can add another class here. I don't know, test. And if I go here, now, as you can see, I have a class test, I have a class container. So I can give it multiple class if I want. So it should be simple. What if I want to remove a class? Can I? Can I remove, oh, shit, sorry. Can I remove a class? Of course I can. Same idea, div dot, no. Div dot class list dot remove, and voila, it will remove my class here. And I don't have the class anymore. What if I want to toggle the class? Do you know what toggle mean? So if I have a button and I did something, for example, I click on it. If there is no class on it, it will add a class. If there is already a class, it will remove the class. That's what we call toggle. Toggle class can add and remove depending on what you are doing. There is this method as well. I don't want to go too much to it, but You have toggle as well. And if you hover over toggle, what it's going to do here, when you focus on the element or do something in the element, if the class already exists, it will remove it. If it does not exist, it will add it. That's what you call toggle. So that's the most common way we use it when we add classes. Of course, we can add an ID if we want to. You can just say div.id, just like that. It's equal to main. That's possible. As you can see, you can use that if you want. And yeah, you can search for div. There is a lot of method actually. Inner text, inner HTML. You have insert, blah blah blah. A lot of stuff here. And or you already know that's a method. This is a property, and you can go through all of them. But we don't use those all much. What I explained most of the time, we use that most of the time. Okay, I'm selecting my div. What if I want to create an element here in JavaScript? Can I? Can I create an element? Of course I can. How? Document.create element. It's not, I mean, it's simple. And now I can just create now. Let me create H1, for example. And I want to append it. Append mean add it. Append it to the div. Okay, so I want to create an element. Of course, when I create the element, it has no meaning. I cannot see it. Why? Because I did not put it inside the div. I didn't append it. So let's say const header, for example. That's my header element I want to create. I will say document.create element. And of course, I need to say which tag here. So H1, if I make a string, as you can see, H1, H2, I have everything, as you can see. So I'm going to choose H1. And now if I go to my DOM and I see, well, I don't have the H1. Where is my H1? Where is my H1? I need to somehow put it inside the DOM. I created, yes, but I did not append it. I did not put it inside the DOM. So yeah, my element exists. I know it is here. But all the time when you create an element, you need to append it. If you don't append it, you didn't add it to the DOM, you will not see it. Clear? So now I want to add it inside the div. So I can say div.append. There is a method called append child. You can add before specific element, after specific. There is multiple methods. But for now, the simplest one is just append. And here I can append my header. Voila. And now if I go, voila, I have my header. Of course, my header is there's nothing inside it, as you can see, but it exists here. Voila, I can see it. Now, if I want to add a text, and you already know that, if I want to add a text inside my header, which one I use? Inner text, right? So I can just say header dot inner text, and I can say, for example, hi, something hi, for example, hi, something like that, and voila, as you can see, I have my header. Cool. So now you know how to select your element using different ways or different method. You know now how to change the text inside your DOM element. You know how to change even the HTML. You know now how to create a DOM element. You know how to add a class. You know how to remove a class. You know how to toggle a class. And that should be actually very good for now. Is it clear? Yes? Let me check if I forgot anything quickly. I know this one. Of course, I need to introduce you a little bit to event because I think you'll need it. So as you can see, get by ID, tag name, we've seen it, class name, we've seen it. You can add attribute. I did not explain the attribute actually. Well, I explained it, but not that much. But anyway. Now, let me take another element. Let me create a button. Const btn, my button. Of course, to create a button, I will say document.create element, and I can use the button, right? Now, what if I want to add the type here? What if I want to add the type to the button? Can I? Yes, that's what you call attribute. So anything inside the opening tag of the HTML element, for example, the button could have a type. It could have, for example, a lot of attribute. For example, the image could have a source. It could have what else? Alt. I can add all these attributes. Either I can say just btn dot, what was the attribute I want to type? I can use here type, and I give it type button, just directly dot, because it's an object I told you. So I say dot type, and it's equal to button, or I can use set attribute. So I have a method also called set attribute. And in set attribute, I can here its key value. So I need to say is the property is type. So the property is type and the type is button like that. And here I can set an attribute. And now if I append my button now to the div, so div dot append and between not append child, I want append. There is slightly different between append and append child, but for now it's not important for you to know. Okay, that's my button. And the type, as you can see, it's button, so it's working, yeah? What if I want to add another attribute? Yeah, so any attribute you want to add, you can add it this way, or you can just say button dot type. If it's an image, you will have dot source, dot alt, so you can add whatever you want to. That's how we set an attribute, either this way, or just using btn dot type, and here say it's a button. So you have two different ways. What if I want to remove an attribute? Well, I can remove an attribute if I want to here. So dot, I think there is a method called remove attribute. Yes, that's it. If I click on it here in remove attribute, I don't need to pass the boss value. I just need to say which attribute I want to remove. Here, I want to remove the ID, or I want to remove the type, for example, or I want to remove well, whatever here. So now we know already how to set an attribute, either using set attribute, and set attribute take two values, the attribute name and the value. For example, if it's an image, the attribute name, it will be src, the source, and here the value, it will be the source, blah, 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 something. If it's alt, you need to say alt, and then you need to give it a value. So it must be the name of the attribute and the value. If you want to remove it, you can just say remove attribute, and you need to pass just the name of the attribute. Or simply, you can just use the dot operator to set any attribute you want to. Clear? Okay. I'll explain this one as well. You know, append and append child, just use append for now. Do not use append child. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I forgot anything in the element. Diniando, do I forgot anything, Diniando? Except the button and events.
No, no.
Okay, good. Of course, you can go through this one and see different stuff. But for now, I just want to give you the basic, because really we shouldn't study the DOM now. We should study it actually, not the next module, the module after, but you will need it to create your project. I'm going to teach you one more thing, which are events. So what the hell are events? Events is when the user do something. For example, let me create my button here, and just to make it simple, let me delete all of that. Let me go to my HTML here, and inside this div, I'm going to create a button. And here I just say button, and type its button. And here, for example, click me. Voila. And here I can give it an ID. Why? Because it will be easier for me to select. So I will just give it an ID btn. So let's go select our button. How can I select my button? Yeah, document dot. I give it an ID. Get element by
ID.
Yeah, not query selector. I want just get element by ID. Voila. Now I have my button here. If I go to my page, and this is my button. Now, of course, when you create a website, you have a lot of button, a lot of link, a lot of stuff. When you click on them, something happen, right? That's what we call events. So the event, when the user interact with your page, something happen. And of course, now here's the event. What I want when I click on this button, I want to, for example, log something here to the console. Just make it very simple for now. But how can I do that? Well, it's quite simple as well. All I have to say just btn, and the method is add event listener. Event listener, that means I will listen to whatever the user is doing. Whenever the user do something, I want something to happen. So the method called add event listener. Now, if I hover over add event listener, it gives me a lot of information here. Now, for add event listener, it takes at least two parameters. The first parameter, it must be the event. What event I'm looking for? Click, double click, mouse hover, blur, focus when the user focus on something. So I have a lot of events. So the first property here, or the first argument, it need to be, as you can see, if I put a text like that, so I have a lot of event. I have apport, I have animation, blah, blah. I have blur, I have cancel, I have change, I have click, I have close. So I have a lot of event for now. But what's interesting for me now, it's just the click. So what is my event? My event is click. So add event listener, take two argument here. The first argument is, or the first parameter, it will be the event. And here it must be inside the string like click. And the second one, it will be a function. So here I'm gonna pass an arrow function. What's that supposed to mean? Well, it's just I'm telling, okay, okay, my DOM, if someone click on this button, I want this function to be executed. Simply like that. And now here I can go inside my function. I just log button click, for example. And let's go and test it. Refresh. Cannot read property of null. Yeah, the ID was BTN. You're right. Actually, that's a good point here. If the DOM does not find your element, what it will return? Not really, not in the DOM, something else. What is undefined type is undefined. What is type is object? Null. So here in the DOM, if it does not find an element and I log it, it will give me null. So if I log it now, log, it will give me null, btn. And here, as you can see, it gives me null. So if the document here or the DOM or whatever does not find any element, it will not return undefined, it will return simply null. Why? Because I told you all DOM element, everything inside the DOM, it's an object. So that's the reason it returned a null. Anyway, that was good note. Now here, let's just use btn, and now it should work actually, clicking. And now here, if I click on this one, as you can see, voila, magic. Cool. What if I want another event? Most of the time you will use click, but for now I will want to use hover. If I hover over this one, do I have an event called hover? I know, I think we have mouse in, if I'm not mistaken. Mouse in. Let me check the event here, or the event. Here, event, DOM event. So let's see what event do we have. I want to see all the event. Okay. All DOM events, JavaScript. Mouse event. I have mouse down, mouse move. Yeah, but I want to see my event. Where the hell are they?
Mouse over.
No. You have specific event you need to use, my friend. Adil, it's the event must be there. So we have different event. We have a lot of event actually, but I just need to know which one it is. Understand DOM events. That's not what I want to. I want just list. I think it's called mouse in or something like that. All DOM events list. Okay, that I have. Click, yes. Double click, no. Drag. Focus, no. Mouse. We should have mouse down, no. Mouse over. And there is something called mouse in, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, I'm gonna use mouse over. So let's see if this event will work or not. It's on mouse over. It should be only mouse over. Let's click on it. Mouse over. And let's see if that will work. It does not work. Mouse event JavaScript. So I have on click, yes, on double click, on mouse down, yes, it's on mouse move, yes, on mouse over, yes, I should have this one. Mouse over. Strange. It doesn't work. Mouse move, let's use. Sorry? Just a second, Goldkin. Oh yeah, this one is working, as you can see. When I move over it here, it's working. But anyway, the idea here is you have a lot of different event, as you can see. Okay, what I'm interested in most of the time for now, you just use click, but you can use a different event if you want to. Okay, is the idea clear? So now you know if the user tried to interact with your website, you need to add event listener, and the event listener all the time, it would click at least, now I'm telling you at least 2 parameters, because there is another parameter, but we don't use it for now. First, it will be the event. If you don't remember the event, you can Google them, but for now, I don't think you'll need any. Or you can just do that in your VS Code. Here, it will show you a port, blur, cancel, change, close. I should have mouse here. No, I don't have mouse here. But anyway, click. And voila. And of course, after that, here's the second parameter, it will be function. Remember, this function, it will not be executed unless the event happen. So for the button here, it will not be executed directly. Only when I click on it, because the event is click, then it will happen. Then it will be triggered. Did I forget anything else? I'm not sure. I think that's the basic of the DOM. I'm gonna stop the recording. Any question?